Welcome to The Critique. Today we're digging into a script for a commentary video. It argues that the unredacted Epstein files actually vindicate Donald Trump and expose a wider Epstein class of global elites.
Right. This is a really high-octane piece. It has a super provocative thesis, but we need to make sure the delivery doesn't end up sabotaging the data.
So a key theme that kind of runs through this whole thing is this juxtaposition of, serious investigative updates with this really colloquial, almost aggressive internet slang.
Yeah.
The author is presenting what they believe are like smoking gun legal documents, police reports, court documents, but it's all wrapped in the language of, I guess, internet warfare.
That's laid out really clearly, but I wonder, what's the cost of that specific packaging? I think the weakness here is that the heavy reliance on these derogatory slurs.
The really intense ones.
Yeah, terms like retards, leftoids, that kind of thing. And then you get the extreme hyperbole, the eating babies and vampires stuff. It significantly undermines the credibility of the factual evidence that's being presented.
Right.
I mean, if your goal is to prove to a neutral observer that Trump is innocent, using language that only appeals to this very specific kind of edgelord subculture, you immediately discredit the whole argument.
It makes the whole piece feel more like an emotional rant than a forensic breakdown.
Exactly. A neutral listener hears a slur, and they often stop listening right there, before they even hear the evidence.
I can see that. The material wants to be entertaining and based, but it's risking burying the lead under all the insult. So let's see how we can strengthen that. I guess the suggestion is to sort of split the tone.
How do you mean?
Well, you can maintain the high energy, the outsider persona that's clearly the brand, it's the hook. But you strip away the ad hominem attacks that just distract from the core investigative findings. You can be aggressive and anti-establishment without being juvenile.
Exactly. And you risk overlooking the opportunity to actually dismantle their arguments with the data you have. So here are some concrete examples.
Okay.
First, look at the part about Harry Sisson. The script just calls him retarded for his take on the files.
Right.
Instead of just name-calling, the author should just dismantle Sisson's argument using the specific timeline evidence they already have. The 2004 Mar-a-Lago ban, the 2009 cooperation with the victim's lawyer.
It's so much more powerful to say, Sisson claims X, but here's the police report from 2004 proving Y.
Yes. Let the facts make him look foolish, rather than just calling him names.
That makes a lot of sense. It proves the point instead of just shouting it, and it lets the listener draw their own conclusion, which is always more persuasive.
And, building on that, look at the segment on Jasmine Crockett. She's mocked for confusing Dr. Jeffrey Epstein with the financier, and the script attacks her IQ.
Yeah.
A stronger approach would be a step-by-step breakdown of why her defense was factually wrong. You could just highlight the absurdity of a sitting congresswoman not knowing who she's talking about in a legal hearing. Let the error speak for itself. It's way more damning than an insult.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, that eating babies rhetoric from the Roseanne Barr clip. Replace it. Focus on the specific crimes in the file, like the trafficking networks or the FBI scrubbing file. You can mention Barr's vampire comments, but frame it as, a metaphor for the elite's predatory nature, cultural commentary. Don't present it as literal fact next to police report.
Okay, so the argument here is that the author has the receipts, but they're kind of hiding them behind a wall of noise.
That's a good way to put it.
So let's look at the timeline. The material has a really strong chronological argument about Trump's actions against Epstein. The banning, the reporting, helping victims. But that timeline is just scattered throughout the script like confetti.
That's a huge structural issue. The weakness is that the specific exculpatory evidence, Trump banning him in 2004, reporting him in 2005, assisting the lawyer in 2009, it's just buried under layers of reaction content and rants.
So the listener has to hunt for it.
They have to hunt for the timeline in between tangents about Somalia and Jasmine Crockett and Alex Jones. By the time they piece it together, they've probably lost the thread. The smoking gun is there, but it's not loaded into the chamber.
It feels like the author is just so excited to react to clips that they forgot to lay the foundation first.
Totally.
Okay, so what I like about this is the potential for a slam dunk moment, if it's organized right. So the suggestion here is to consolidate that timeline into a dedicated case for the defense section.
Right up front?
Yeah. Early in the script to establish that factual baseline before you move into all the reaction commentary.
That makes sense, but you have to make it impossible to miss. So concrete examples. First, move the reference to the Michael Reiter interview. That's the Palm Beach police chief who confirmed Trump helped the investigation. Move that to the very beginning.
That's the hook.
That's your hook. It's an authority figure validating the whole thesis. Don't hide it in the middle of a rant. Start with the police chief saying, Donald Trump was the only one who helped us. That grabs the audience immediately.
That would definitely give the argument more weight right out of the gate. It creates this stickiness where the viewer is now looking for evidence to support that claim.
Precisely. Second, group the list of actions, the 2004 ban, the 2009 cooperation, the 2017 executive order, into a single, bulleted narrative block.
Instead of sprinkling them between comments about Ilhan Omar.
Yes, read them out like a legal brief. Exhibit A, he banned him. Exhibit B, he reported it. It creates this rhythm of facts it's hard to argue.
What about the nukes is always right jar?
That's a fun community thing, but use it as a summary device after the evidence is laid out. Right now, it interrupts the flow. Lay out the facts, prove the point, and then take the victory lap. It makes the told you so moment feel earned by data, not just intuition.
Okay, moving on. Let's look at that big detour. The script takes this significant detour into Somalia and Ilhan Omar right in the middle of the analysis.
Yeah, this is a classic case of losing the plot. The weakness is that the section on definitions of pedophilia in Somalia and cultural practices with mutilation, it's a massive red herring.
I mean, I see they're trying to attack her credibility.
But going into graphic detail about 99% of women being mutilated just completely disrupts the flow of the Epstein analysis. It dilutes the focus on the actual files, and honestly, it risks alienating listeners who tuned in for the legal stuff.
It's like a completely different video starts playing in the middle of this one.
An anthropology lesson, yeah. So the suggestion is to strictly edit this section, focus only on the relevant political deflection, and just remove the cultural anthropology sidebar entirely.
So just cut it out.
Cut the graphic descriptions and the statistics. It's shocking, yes, but it is irrelevant to the legal argument about Trump and Epstein. Instead, focus exclusively on Ilhan Omar's tweet, where she claims Trump is in the files to deflect from her own stuff.
Because the tweet itself is relevant.
The tweet is relevant. It shows how the Epstein list is being used as a political weapon. And you can use that to pivot back to the actual content of the file, like the context of the 1 million mentions claim versus what those mentions really are.
That keeps the narrative tight. You use her tweet as a springboard back to your main thesis, instead of a trapdoor into a whole other topic.
Exactly. You shift from her background to her behavior regarding the files. And then you transition directly from the pedophile protection party accusation to the Ro Khanna interview.
Get to him faster.
Get to him fast. Khanna provides the bipartisan credibility the script seems to crave. You want to get to the Democrat who agrees with you as quickly as possible.
Speaking of that interview, let's talk about how external sources are integrated. It's a really strong move to include that CoffeeZilla interview with Ro Khanna, but a big chunk of the script is just the host watching it.
A huge missed opportunity. The weakness is that the host's commentary during that segment is it's passive agreement. Phrases like true, facts, based, or just interruptions that don't add value.
Right.
It slows the pacing way down without helping the listener understand the cover-up better. The audience can hear Khanna speak. They need the host to explain why what he's saying matters to the argument about Trump. They don't need a cheerleader. They need a translator.
Okay, so the source material itself, the interview, is explosive. So the suggestion is to use more of a pause and elaborate technique.
Where the host synthesizes what Khanna just said.
Right, and connects it back to the Trump vindicated thesis, rather than just cheering from the sidelines.
That's fascinating, because it changes the host from a spectator to a guide. So, for example, when Ro Khanna lists the 6 redacted names, like Sultan Ahmed bin Sulayem or Les Wexner.
Most people don't know who they are.
Exactly. So pause the clip. Don't just let the names fly by. Briefly explain who these people are. Remind the audience that Les Wexner owned Victoria's Secret and funded Epstein. Explain why their redaction is so significant. You turn a list of names into a list of suspects.
That adds so much more depth. It connects the dots for someone who might not know who the CEO of Dubai Ports World is, or why that even matters here.
Right. And when Khanna talks about the FBI scrubbing file, you explicitly connect that back to the host's earlier point about the deep state or the Biden administration. You say something like, Look, Khanna is a Democrat admitting the FBI scrubbed files. This proves my earlier point that this isn't partisan, it's systemic.
Reinforce the internal logic.
Exact. And instead of just agreeing with his point about the Epstein class, define that term. Use the immunity deals mentioned earlier in the script. Make it a concrete concept, not just a buzzword. Say, this is what he means by the Epstein class, the people who got the non-prosecution agreement.
Okay, that brings us to the final point. The whole argument here relies on a mix of hard evidence and, speculation. There's this tension between the script's desire for logical things and its embrace of conspiracy theories.
This is where the script really risks self-sabotage. The weakness is that it conflates documented legal fact, like Khanna's finding, or the police account from Michael Reiter, with really wild speculation, like Roseanne Barr's vampire claim.
The eating babies stuff again?
Right. And by presenting them with equal weight, it allows a skeptic to dismiss the hard evidence as just another part of the crazy theory. If you tell me Trump is innocent because of a police report, and then in the next breath tell me politicians are vampires, I'm going to start doubting the police report. You're poisoning your own well.
I see what you're saying. The author wants to vindicate the conspiracy theorists who are right, but blending the two things just weakens the factual case. So the suggestion is to use the kind of hierarchy of evidence approach.
A hierarchy. I like that.
Where the script clearly distinguishes between, say, courtroom fact and cultural speculation.
That's a crucial distinction. We need to categorize the claims to save the credibility of the main argument. So, for an example, frame the Roseanne Barr segment as cultural commentary or metaphorical truth. You can say, Roseanne uses extreme language, like vampires, but she's metaphorically describing a parasitic class. You don't suggest literal vampirism is on par with unsealed court documents.
That allows them to keep the clip, which they clearly love and it serves a stylistic purpose, but without wrecking the legal argument.
Exactly. It respects the source material, but contextualizes it. Also, when discussing the 1 million times claim about Trump's name in the files, be more precise. Explicitly contrast the number of mentions with the context of those mentions.
Yeah, the script touches on that, but it gets lost in the insults.
Right. State clearly, yes, his name appears, but the context is procedural or exculpatory. And then use that CoffeeZilla segment as the anchor of truth to validate the host's earlier prediction. Make the Knox is always right victory lap feel earned by data point to the specific timestamp where Khanna validates a prediction. Not just intuition. It moves the script from, trust me, I know, to, look, here is the proof.
This has been a really productive session. So, to recap, the core of this critique is about elevating the material from just a reaction video to more of a forensic takedown. We talked about improving tonal consistency by stripping away the ad hominem attacks, the retards and leftoids, to broaden the audience and keep neutral listeners engaged.
And we looked at structuring the evidence for maximum impact, consolidating that timeline of Trump's anti-Epstein actions into one undeniable block right at the start, leading with the police chief's testimony.
We also identified the need to manage those tangents, specifically cutting the irrelevant anthropology lesson on Somalia to keep the focus squarely on the political weaponization of the Epstein files.
And integrating external sources more actively by pausing and elaborating on Ro Khanna's points instead of just passively agreeing, turning the host into a guide. And finally, emphasizing the importance of distinguishing between hard legal fact and wild conspiracy theory so the vampire talk doesn't discredit the police.
We really encourage the writer to take these notes, refine the script, and submit it again. There is a very strong evidence-based argument buried in here, and with a bit of polish and reorganization, it could be incredibly persuasive to a much wider audience.
Absolutely. The raw materials are there. It just needs to be built into a structure that can actually withstand scrutiny. Good luck with the rewrite.
That's all for this critique. We'll see you next time.